Hi there, good morning, guys. This is Miss Kelly. So we are looking at the second part of our first lesson here. Originally, we've talked about points, lines, and planes. So now we're going to add to that a line segment and a ray. So the stuff we're going to see today is similar to the line, but we're going to be getting a little more specific today. So let's jump in with our first term, the line segment. All right, so we're going to start by looking at the facts that come along with line segments. So one fact about a line segment is that it is measurable. Sorry, this is a little big this morning. All right, a line segment is a measurable, meaning you can measure it because it is only a part of a line. It's not the whole thing. While a line can keep going infinitely in opposite directions, a segment is just a little part of that. So that means it's going to have a beginning and it's going to have an end. So it's a measurable part of a line with endpoints. And those endpoints are going to be very important for us. Okay. Now, another way to think about those endpoints is they are at the beginning and the end, or that's just where the segment starts and stops. So let's add to this now. How do we draw a line segment? Well, starts off similar to a line. So I am going to have two dots. But this time I do not have the arrows because it's not going to keep going. It's going to have a start and it's going to have a stop. And those start and stops are where our points are located. So guys, if these are 2 points here at the beginning and end of my segment, they also need to be named capital letters because they are in fact points. So again, there are the end points. Now, unlike a line, a segment is not going to have that lowercase cursive letter because that lowercase cursive is supposed to be by an arrow. So if there are no arrows for this picture, then there will not be a lowercase cursive letter. All right, so let's talk about how we drew that picture. All right, so to kind of give you an example of what some pictures of these might look like in the real world. Okay, the hyphen that comes between some words or some names, that's considered a segment. Also a dash, or maybe even the hash marks that are out on some football fields. So those are all just different pictures that you would normally see that have a segment in them. So let's keep going now. How do we name a segment? So we first have to use the letters at the end. This is a requirement. Unlike the line where you could use any 2 letters, any 2 points, anywhere on it, a segment, you have to use the beginning and the end. So the letters at the end points. And then we'll talk about the symbol for a segment here in just a little bit. All right, so now let's look about the words or the symbols. All right, so we have to again use those 2 letters. So my segment started with an A and ended with a B, depending on which letter you see first. And it has just a little teeny tiny little segment on top of it. So that little bitty symbol resembles a whole lot on how the picture is going to look. The other way you could name this same segment, maybe you saw B first and then your eyes moved to A, so you can reverse those 2 letters like the line. Again, because the ends are the same. A line has an arrow at each end, a segment has a dot at each end. So the order of your letters is not going to matter. It's still the same object. All right, so let's look now at our next term for our unit to finish this part up, and that is array. All right, so specifically, what are the facts that we know about rays? Well, the ray is kind of what happens when you merge a line with a segment. It is a part of a line. But it only has one endpoint. Okay, so there's our clue, one endpoint. And this is where the similarity of the line comes in, because the other end will continue infinitely. And to get even a little more specific there, it's only going to happen in one direction. Whoops, sorry. Okay, so it's only going to extend in one direction, not both like the line, and they're both not going to stop like the segment. All right, so let's continue this on. Let's see, how are they drawn as? Okay, so drawn as, I need array, so I need one endpoint. And it's going to continue off to the upper right here. Now, we do have to have at least 2 dots on it. So let's say we have an A here, and then the second dot anywhere else on the array could be a B. Okay, so again, that letter that I choose to use anywhere on the line is what I need to find. But when we get ready to name these, this one is a little more specific because it's only got one endpoint. And unlike the line and the segment, this one's ends are different. At the A, it stops, but at the B, it keeps going. So you've got an arrow only at one end. So let's get some real world pictures here, some ideas of where you might see a ray out there in reality. Well, one big one are the sun rays. Think about those rays when they're coming down from the sun. They start up in space at the sun, and then they shoot out straight from the sun, and that's how they make it down to Earth. So that's kind of our big picture here when we're looking at rays. Our next one, how is it named? We need to, the one requirement is that you must use the end point first. Okay, the endpoint must come first. And I'm even going to underline that in a different color to show you how important it is. All right, so if we are going to deal with that ray, that endpoint must come first. Any other letter on the ray next. Okay, but again, that endpoint must come first. All right, so our last part here, how we name these, let's actually get the symbol up here for it. So my specific ray started at the A and passed through the B, so the arrow has to be at the B. Now, when it does come to naming this, for the symbols, the arrow must always point to the right. Even if the actual picture maybe has it pointing to the left, you always have to start with the ending letter first. So that means that no matter what direction that ray is pointing, when we just write the symbol, this little name, it's always going to point to the right. Because again, we always have to start with our endpoint letter. And then any other point along that ray is going to work for us. So let's practice naming some of these things. Now, before we get into naming these, there are 2 new vocabulary words that we're going to add to this list. we have the idea of collinear. So let's break this down for just a second. The co part of this is just another way to say same. And notice the same word that the similar word we're gonna look at next also starts with the abbreviation co here. So with that co prefix, both of these are talking about the same something. So now we need to get more specific. What is the something that things are going to be the same with? So for our first one, let's look at linear. Guys, you've seen this word multiple times before because we're referring to linear, like you've learned in Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, which means line. So when we talk about things that are collinear, these are objects that lie on the same line. So keep in mind, collinear means they need to line up. These could be points. These could be any kind of object. When you actually sit in class and your desks are in rows, you are all collinear in that row because you're all lined up. You're all in the same row. Now, if we were to reverse that idea, take the opposite of that idea, we also have non-collinear. Which means not on the same line or not collinear. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Now let's check out our next word that's down here, our next new vocab word. Again, coplanar. So again, the prefix of this means same. Planar for, can you guess it? Objects that lie on the same plane. So this just means on the same surface. If we think about the floor of your room or the floor of your house as your plane, when you are there and all your family is there in the house, you are all coplanar because you're all technically on the same floor because you're all, even though you're in different rooms, you're all still in that same house. And that floor is in one level of your house. So you're all collinear. When you sit in a classroom, no matter where you sit with the other people in the class, you're all coplanar because you're all on the same floor in the classroom. So same idea. And from that, we also get non-coplanar, which again just means not coplanar. So they're not on the same surface. So maybe you're downstairs in your home and your mom or dad, your parents might be upstairs or your siblings might be upstairs. You're no longer on the same floor, so you are not coplanar. You're on different surfaces. So let's see if we can practice naming some things. Let's see how we do. All right, so example 1, name the different objects. Guys, there's 3 different objects here that we're going to be naming. We have 1, which has an arrow at each end. So that is line. We have JK. Or you could say line KJ, same object. Let's do another one. Now we're looking at this piece that has the same 2 kinds of ends happening, but this time it's a segment that we're looking at. So now we have segment KL. And again, since the ends are the same, you can also reverse it, same object. And now let's do our last one. And this one does get specific here because you have an arrow at the J, but a dot at the L. So this one we can only write one way. Again, notice this ray is pointing to the left, but I have to start at the end of it where the end point is. So I have to start with L and then it passes through J. Sorry, that does not look like a J. And there is my ray. This symbol tells me I have a ray that starts at L and passes through J. So there's only one way to write that one. All right, let's check out example 2 and just kind of remember the idea of surfaces here for a second. How many surfaces are in this figure. So now we're going to be practicing our 3D visualizations here. All right, so I do have the one surface that's down here on the bottom. So there's one. Now that we can see our green one, let's see if we can find the rest. Now notice on the bottom of this pyramid, guys, it's sitting on the same surface. So do not double count it. Okay, we don't know if that bottom of the pyramid is actually a solid surface or if it's open. Okay, so we don't want to assume, we don't want to double count that. But we've got the one big green one on the bottom. You have the front of our pyramid, so there's two. We have the right side of our pyramid, so there's three. The back side of our pyramid, notice the dashes that are back here. That's just letting you know that, hey, those are pieces of that figure that you wouldn't see normally. They're still back there. So now there's three surfaces. Erase all my little dashes here. And then you've got the back left side of this same figure. Because again, you may not necessarily see that in the real world. So we in fact have 4 from the pyramid and then the one big green one on the bottom. So we have 5 planes. 1 from the bottom and then 4 from the pyramid. All right, so let's check out our second to last example here, example 3, and we are dealing with collinear points. So again, they need to be on the same line. They need to line up. So let's check out each of our different lines here. All right, so we've got this first line, only 2 given dots on that one, 2 points. So I don't have enough to say collinear. So let's try the next one. Same problem, only 2 dots. So I don't have enough to really say collinear because I need 3 of them. Let's check our last one. Just because it's not laying flat on the plane doesn't mean I can't pull collinear points. All right, so there's my 3 points all lining up for collinear. So we have points A, B, and E. There's our 3 points. All right, let's check out our last example 4. Are points N, S, R, and W coplanar? So again, this means, are those 4 dots on the same surface? So we need to figure out what surface are these positions at. So let's start with N. So there's my N dot. Now let's find S. So far we're sticking to the bottom of that shape. Now let's find R, still on the bottom, and let's find W. Ooh, problem. W is not on the bottom with these other figures. These other ones are all resting on the bottom, but W is on the top. So these are not coplanar. These are not coplanar. Okay, again, because the first 3 are on the bottom surface, the bottom plane, and W is on the top plane or maybe on the left plane, but it is not on the bottom with the other 3 points. So these are not coplanar. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed learning a little bit about our next round of terms. I hope to see you guys in class later this morning, and please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions at all over any of this new material. So bye, guys, and have a great rest of your day.